Hello, welcome everybody. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
We are ready to start this week's HR Huddle. And Jen and I were having a little bit of an epiphany last week as we were talking about reopening, and as we talked about generating your why, and figuring out why you want people to come back to the office, and why we're creating this blended environment, or whatever our expectations were. We also talked about this idea of the phrase reopening does not really work, because most of us have been working and we have had offices open. And I think most firms as essential workers have had people in the office, and some administrative people in the office. Some partners have wanted to work in the office. So we just thought it was kind of funny talking about this reopening, yet that's what people kind of are attracted to and using. But we started to say it's really about having options, and more options, for work, where we work, and, how do we create those options. And Jen, I know you and Renee just facilitated a webinar on this topic earlier today, and you've had a week to walk around and think about it. And we've talked to others about it. And I just thought, maybe you could start and share, what have you noticed, or what else have you seen as you've been thinking about this from our discussion last week and from today?
Yeah, great, Tamera. And I'm glad to be with you all today on this subject in particular, because I know it's weighing on everyone's mind. And I think why I don't like reopening is because we didn't close for business. We might have closed the office even. Maybe nobody's been back to your office really for the purposes of day-to-day work, but we didn't close for business. So it's kind of weird to say we're reopening. And certainly clients would not get that, I don't think, since they've been picturing you as open for business the whole time. So anyway, where we left off Friday, and where we sort of took it this week, or a week ago Monday, I guess,
Yes.
And where we took it all week, was in this idea of, instead of saying reopening the office, we would say we're opening up new options for work, or we're expanding the number of options you have for work that include more in-office options. And so it doesn't sound like it's a mandate. And I think that if I had anything to say that you really heard me say today, it's that everything around this subject cannot feel anything but inviting, and it cannot feel mandatory, mandated. It can't feel sort of, do it or else. It has to feel inviting and welcoming, and like an expansion, and there are benefits associated with it, that why Tamera mentioned. So I think that's one thing, Tamera, is that that it's a little bit of a tone thing, maybe, and also an accuracy thing. The other thing is, I know we talked a little bit about this last time, but I'm trying to get us to be sticklers for words. Like, I don't like the word reopening. And another word I'm not crazy about related to any of this is the word back. In general, those of us who are progress-oriented, transformation-oriented, innovative, sort of looking for the next best thing, and that's some percentage of the population, plus a lot of next-gen people, clients and talent, none of us likes the idea of going back to something. Right. Most of us think back there wasn't as good as out there is going to be. And so I think one of the weird things that can happen for some of us is we get nostalgic, and we think, man, those good old days, or back when we were in the office. Do you remember that, when we gather around in the bullpen and we share stories? That was awesome. We sort of romanticize or something. And I would just tell you that most nostalgia is a figment of our imagination, the warmth of it. It wasn't that awesome. And most of your team members don't want to go back to anything. So we want to remove the word back, because it sounds, we think, like a regression, not a progression. And so what's next? What's next? Looking ahead, things like that, language like that. So if we're going to open up new options for work and expand your choices for where you work, that's not going back to the office. And right. So if you could think about some of those phraseology changes, I would be grateful.
Yes, I think that's a good point. And I think that's one of the things we wanted to make sure to talk about too, was some of those phraseology ideas. And I think that's where we got on the options idea, and being flexible in our communication about flexibility. And so that tone, I think, is important, but just really creating the way for people to think about what's going to work for me. How do I keep my commitments to you, my fellow colleagues and my clients? How do I keep commitments to my family? And how do I keep commitments to myself? Because, some people really want to wait till get vaccinated, wait till there's more mass vaccinations. Other people are like, I'm in the office immediately, and there's no right or wrong answer. We do need to make sure people are safe. I do think that's kind of a level setting that, if I were to message something that above all, people's safety, health and safety is number one, and we're committed to that. So I would explicitly express that. I don't think we can mandate, vaccines. I don't think we can mandate, the timing for that for people. I do think we can mandate masks. I do think we can mandate adhering to social distancing, whatever that looks like in our office space, and cleaning and those kinds of things. But other than that, I think it's how do we best work? And I think the other piece of flexibility that we're seeing is it might look like, okay, we're going to open the office so that this number of people can work, and this is how we're going to have, conference rooms and desks and all of that, and hallways look, and that might change in 2 weeks. So we've been talking a lot about now I need to pull back. We just don't know what's going to happen. And we had three middle schools. We have three middle schools in our city. They closed as of Friday for 2 weeks, and so they went back to in person the week before spring break, and then came back from spring break 10 days later, and now they're doing 2 weeks of online. And I think we're going to have some of that. And I think it's going to be by city, by location, but being flexible with that and being encouraging in that messaging, setting people's expectation up front that might happen, so it's not a shock when it does. And so contemplating what possibilities might occur, and here's how we're going to handle it, or here's how we anticipate handling it when it does. I think those kinds of things are also important in our messaging. If we can anticipate that for people, and then when we have to make changes or we have to shift, then they're a little bit at least more emotionally prepared for it. And we've done some thinking and planning about it too.
Yeah. Well, and, on some of those phraseology things related to just what you were talking about, this idea that, I think one of the mistakes we make as leaders is we're acting a little bit like, when the pandemic is over, we will go back to all of us working in the office like the good old days. And there won't be things that disrupt us again.
Right.
And we won't have to make audibles day by day or week by week after this. And I think that could be like a form of lying to self or something. Because first of all, everywhere you'll turn, there are statistics that show that a high percentage of the population intend to work multiple days, if not every day, remotely from their employer, and they will not stay with their current employer if that's not supported. And we talked about this last Monday. Somewhere between 50% and 67% are most of the surveys, although we have seen some that are as high as 80% of the team saying, no, I don't plan to come back to the office full time. I'm going to work remotely. So I think one of the things we have to start looking at in the way we language and the way we strategize and run the business and the way we conceive of our business model is that we have to accept that we are going to be a blended workforce.
Right.
And we will have a blend of people working from their homes, working from clients, working from the office or offices. If we're multi-office, we will have people working, in their car on a road trip on their way out of town while their spouse or significant other's driving or whatever.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, we're going to have like anywhere work, which we've been teaching about for 21 years. And we believe that the time has come, and it's not just because Convergence wants it to. It's because people found out that even with all the hampering of people, stuck in a house together, in small spaces, both talking on the telephone, kids at your feet, homeschooling them with Zoom, all these impediments, not being able to leave at night, that work from home really does work. And it does have all these benefits that include a reduced commute and that include more family time and just a whole bunch of things. So we're going to have to look at our language all the way along and our strategy and what we're talking about in the small room as a leadership team when we're trying to think about how can we just abolish this thing and get back there, that we just have to get over that. We have to say we're going forward to this new blended place, and we need corporate commitment statement or something about it. And we need the ability to turn off the faucet and on the faucet when we have world events that require more work away from the office than work in it's a communal space when it's in the office. So when is it good to be communal and when is it not going to work? And sometimes it's not going to work because of a pandemic, and maybe that will never happen again. But maybe if like busy season and flu season coincide, why wouldn't we spend more time trying to space out the number of human beings in the office so we don't all get the flu? And yes, we're going to get flu shots and COVID boosters and all that stuff, but sometimes the flu takes people down. Whole offices can go down with that stuff. And maybe there's weather events, floods, hurricanes, blizzards, big snowfalls, whatever it is that make it so that we need to be less at the office and more out there. So we just need the ability to start seeing that this kind of a business model, this fluid, balanced, blended business model makes a lot of sense. And we need to start building all our programs around it.
Well, and you made me think another constituency we need to be communicating with is our clients and bring them along. So not only are we going to bring, leadership along and then team members along and, this new blended environment that we have and more options, we have to make sure our clients know this is how we're working going forward. And I know sometimes there's a hesitancy to dictate that or mandate that with the clients. We want to be flexible. We want to be approachable, but this is how we're working. And we do have some people that are going to be working from home. We have people that are going to be in the office. It's going to be a mix. And we have these different technologies that we're using, get more consistent about this is the technology that we're using. And this is how we work. And so I think there's like messaging and communications to think about going out to the clients, starting new engagements on our website, maybe an update, this is an update from us and this is what we're doing. So there's different ways in social media. There's just different places we could be, publishing and communicating that. And that will help, as we are moving towards that new destination, that next better, but also the flexibility. We might pull back. We'll let you know if we do, if we have any technology, issues, or, if we're going to, keep the offices, closed, for a couple of weeks, we'll let you know. And that might happen. We'll manage it. We'll let you know. And so how do we facilitate that? But I think that would be helpful to think about, who are the other stakeholders? And clients obviously is a bigger one. There's others I'm sure we could add to the list, but we need to, get those communications out, beyond our internal group as we start to solidify those.
Well, and Tamera, we've always said this about the role of the CPA or the consultant in the lives of the client is not just to deliver a compliance deliverable or some sort of a project deliverable. It's also to be a business partner and an advisor. And part of business partnership and advisory is guiding your clients in these same discussions.
Right.
They should not be mandating and fixating back there at their place and talking about the nostalgic good old days. Or what's going to happen is people are going to leave.
Right.
They're going to leave to go to work for firms that they feel get it, that are understanding this new blended distributed workforce thing and are ready to do it and willing to invest and willing to pilot and try things. And so we need to be not just letting our clients know what our own plans are, but trying to find out what their plans are, trying to help them with these issues. You raised the issue of mandating vaccines, and it's a really sticky situation. We recommend for all firms, and this is a big question on most firm leaders' minds, that you seek labor counsel so that you know what your unique state requirements or limitations are, or what case law might look like in this area. Obviously you have to reconcile that with your own risk tolerance and your own value system as well. One thought I had is, and SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, did a survey of American workers, and it was focused on the vaccine. they also found out some other things about remote work and some other interesting kind of side notes. But about 28%, I think, was the statistic of the workers that they surveyed, and they did a combination of phone and email surveys. 28% said, I'm not going to get the shot, and I don't care if my employer mandates it. I will quit or lose my job. I'm okay with that. So that's a little under a third of the people polled. Hopefully, that isn't exactly indicative of the U.S. population. I looked at statistics this morning. It looked like 131 million people had gotten the first shot. Of that, 80 million or so had gotten both shots. We're about 330, 350 million people in the U.S., somewhere around there. So somewhere about 25% are through both shots, and about a third through the single shot or double. So that's still 2/3 of the population that hasn't had a shot yet. And of course, that's partially rollout. It's partially the fact that it hasn't been proven tested and safe for 16 and under. It's still in pilot for that. And part of that's just people being reticent or concerned or having health concerns around it. So we think that, probably mandating it is pretty tough stance, but you could make a mandate or a suggestion, strong suggestion, those that are not vaccinated don't come into the office. At least not now, until we know better what the herd immunity is going to look like, so that you don't end up having them come into the office and not necessarily come in and spread it, but worse, a whole bunch of inoculated people give it to them. Right. And they get really devastatingly ill. And the case law is just starting to show up, not in a CPA firm that I'm aware of, but in other types of businesses where someone got infected at work and died, and people are suing the employer because of that. So, we want to try health and safety first for a lot of reasons. Risk management's one of them. So I do think you do have to have a written policy or some sort of a written position statement, maybe is a better word, related to the vaccine. And there is a feeling that it's not the same level as pilots on an airplane or something, or flight attendants, where they might be able to mandate it. In the office setting, there are options. If somebody doesn't want to get vaccinated, what else could they do and still get their work done? So anyway, that's a kind of an interesting challenge.
Well, and I think that's a good point to anticipate, the different viewpoints and what we're saying about it and get Labor Council review, because it is different. And if you're in multi-state, by the way, you need to figure all of that out, for the different, states to consider what does that look like. So I think that's important. You were making me think of this other idea, around how we're working and what we're communicating with each other, and how do we just really embrace, training, and how do we embrace coaching calls and feedback and, kickoffs with clients. And this back idea, I think some people are waiting to do some of those things still. We've said that before, they're waiting to do that. And, Jen, you've said before, we could find an excuse around every corner why not to do this and barrier, and just keep popping them up. And I think that's part of the messaging also. Here's how to, do a feedback call. Here's how to onboard somebody here. And I know some firms have done a fantastic job. They'll never do onboarding again other than remotely. And so we have to overcome those, because to your point, other firms will, and people will say, I'm going to go to some other firm then that gets it, that is already doing this, or not throwing up roadblocks every turn, of the road. And I think one of the things as an HR professional is, maybe in a leadership team meeting, we talk about what are your objections, throw them up, pop them up so we can address them, and how do we handle them, and who's done it, and what do we need to contemplate, what do we need to message, what do we need to train people on, what technology do you need, who do you need to shadow so you can get comfortable with it. But I think if we really got honest about it and had a forum, a way to do a forum of, pop up, roadblocks, and just get them out, because they're there. And otherwise I'm going to be over here secretly doing my own thing. And, okay, good. You guys can do all that over here, but I'm going to block it. And so get honest about it. Get them out on the table and let's figure out what they are.
So Tamera, I wondered how I would get this in here, but you've absolutely given me the great entrance to say, our senior leaders, they don't realize sometimes that when they express an objection or a roadblock or a belief, a long-held belief, that to everyone else that hears like the death of remote work or something. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One is when a leader says, well, you just can't build relationships remotely. It can only be done in person. Or our clients don't want to be served remotely. Or it's hard to develop business in a blended environment. We really need people back at the office in order for us to build the relationship with referral sources, and in-person networking is critical. We have these beliefs, but what they sound like to everyone else is our senior leadership is not committed to blended or remote. Another one is, if people choose to stay remote, they will limit their career options or their career growth. That's the beginning of a resume development to go out to all the accounting and consulting firms that are out there saying, we don't care where you live, you can work for us. That borderless reach. So I just think that sometimes we don't realize that we're just expressing like our feelings or opinions. It sounds like a company position statement.
Right.
And it makes the entire idea of a blended program sound like it might be impossible for philosophical reasons. And so, HR may be doing a yeoman's job of communicating. We're going to, do one size fits one, and we're going to support your circumstances and all of that. But if senior leadership is in the last audit department meeting, this is what the audit head said. Gosh, that'll undo it as fast as possible. So I love your idea, Tamera, of having a leadership. I want to call it a town hall, and say, let's beat up the blended work model. Let's talk about the objections and let's focus, though. The focus isn't to say, here's what we won't do. Here's what we're going to do is raise the objections and then talk about how could we.
Exactly.
And just really have a how could we moment. And then somebody needs to write a frequently asked questions document off that, because that becomes the way we handle objections. And I just don't think everybody understands how critical this is to your ongoing corporate strategy, your 3 to 5 year vision. This is not just in the next 6 months while we're getting out of this pandemic.
This is long term
and has far-reaching opportunity or consequences. So anyway, I
think we need to tell some clients about those town halls, and maybe we even need to do one as a webinar or roundtable, and we're going to just take all the objections. Yeah, I think we're on to something with that. I love that idea.
I love it too. Let's do it.
So, well, obviously we could continue on this topic, but I think we'll end on that high note with our latest idea, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. We hope you guys have a good, productive week, and take care. We'll talk soon.
Thanks.